Welcome back to this Friday morning preview of this weekend's rugby, mostly South Africa versus England and a bit of the All Blacks against France. I'm doing this in English because I'm on a bit of a holiday in the Cape, and my wife told me, Imvia, you can do one or the other, so I decided I'd rather do both. Speak to my Afrikaans friend in English. So here we go. Welcome back, Ari.
Yes, thanks, Imbe. Yes, nice to speak. We're playing against England, so maybe it's appropriate.
Yeah.
We will try our best. We'll try.
Are we being assimilated?
There might be a few funny words coming through, but mostly the terminology is mostly in English anyway. So
yeah, luckily for that. If our English runs out about this, people, we haven't had any wine yet. We're still running on coffee. We'll see how it goes. Our English tends to run out after a while. But anyway, Ari, first round of the Nations Championship, and a couple of weeks ago we said nobody's really excited about it, but there does seem to be a bit of a buzz developing around this competition. People are saying they're excited about it. Galtier specifically said it. Borthwick said it. Maybe they're just making the right noises. But there seems to be something brewing there. People are getting a bit more excited. These aren't just your normal, winter tests and in November, your summer tests. There's actually something at stake here. And I do think it will make a difference, especially once we get to the business end of it at the end of the year.
Yes, it would be nice in November to be number one for the Southern Hemisphere and play the number one team of the Northern Hemisphere. So to achieve that, you need to win the first one. You don't want to play catch up, and the one for the Springboks against England is massive. So yes, there's a big hype. It's getting bigger. There was going to be games anyway. Normally they come for 2-3 tests. Remember in the winter time, and now it's just a once off. But then we play Scotland and Wales on consecutive weekends as well. So, but yes, I can see also from what we see from the commentary from England as well. It's a good momentum towards that. Interesting what's happening. A lot's been made about Henry Pollock in the squad, of course, and everybody was kind of hoping for him to run on. Even Dwayne Vermeulen was prepared to come back from retirement to play against him for
10 minutes.
Yes. But I think he's a good player, but they're playing him off the bench. That's maybe the big news in the selection, besides a few other things we can talk about on the bench in their scrum that they're also preparing for the box. But Henry Pollock playing off the bench on Saturday, so that's a big news. I think it goes back a little bit to what happened in February in the Six Nations against Ireland. England lost that game 42-21, I think was the score in the Alliance. And he didn't have a good game. He had one or two moments where he helped with a try, but mostly in starting at 8 in that game, he battled in the trenches. I think that's a challenge for Pollock. A little bit with Bobby Skinslett as well, and he's starting off very good in open play. Not bad in the confrontational stuff as well. Pollock not bad, but when it's an arm wrestle in the trenches against the Springboks, maybe he's better off the bench. Anyway, they've got a seasoned loose trio there as well. Ben Earns and Curry also in that, and Chesham. So they've got big loose balls as well. So, but I think the big for me, it's kind of behind the scenes. What is interesting building up to this game, Imvia, and I'll say watch out for the man with the laptop. So that's what I'm going to say about the game on Saturday. And the man with the laptop is Joe Lewis, is his name. Lots been talk about. He just came over from England, so he's a performance analyst, and he came over from England. A very strong CV in performance analyst in athletics, and so he's with the Springboks for the last 5 weeks. So that's the man with a laptop. And in performance analogy, you typically do like video technology, and you do statistical data as well, and you'll do stuff like tracking software, and so they say it's evidence-based insight that he gives. So hopefully there will be good insight into the box. I think the biggest advantage for the Springboks in this is that he's been analyzing the Springboks to length for 5 years plus. He played 2 World Cups. He was analysing for England against the Springboks. So obviously the 2019, 2023 World Cups, also last year when we played against them. So he will know the Springboks. So I think there will be good discussions for Rassie and the team with him. What did he pick up? Analyzing South Africa weaknesses, strengths, etc. Apparently, he's quite good in lineouts and mauls and stuff like that as well. So England defensive mauls was quite good for a long time. So I would say watch out for the man with a laptop, and that's going to be Joe Lewis. He's a new man in the building.
Yeah, you sort of downplayed it a bit, but he's been with England for many years as their analyst, and now suddenly he's with the Springboks right before a Springboks game. And I actually asked Jan de Koning earlier this week, is he actually there? Is he allowed to play or work for the Springboks? No, you just said, yeah, he's been there for 5 weeks. You know, a guy like Rassie will definitely not let that opportunity go by. And interestingly enough, you know, typically when you play against England, the newspapers in England started talking about Rassie as a Machiavellian figure. You know, a couple of adjectives attributed to him, but he's a genius at the end. You know, they call him all kinds of names, and they call him a genius at the end as if that will make everything better now. But typical playing the man and not the ball kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, you said it. Joe Lewis has been there since 2017 in that England setup. He's been with Taranaki Rugby in New Zealand as well, so he's well respected. And interesting, Rassie Erasmus said that he wanted another analyst, and so he said Lewis was available. So that doesn't look good for Steve Borthwick and his team. If somebody becomes available, Felix Jones also was with England and came back to the Springboks. It was reported with Felix Jones that's back. He was just doing the defence for England, and he got frustrated, quote unquote. Felix Jones, he said, got frustrated. He's just contributing on the defence, and he thought defence is about all the processes, all the systems, and all that happen on the field. And he was kind of stuck in just defence, and he didn't get along with Steve Borthwick, and he's gone. So there's two coaches that knows quite a bit about England rugby. So we still need to do it. But also it was other way around. Matt Proudfoot was with the Springboks at one stage, and he went to England, so he could give that information as well to England. So it's not all one-way traffic, but I still think that's behind the closed doors. So that's something we don't see. We see it play out on the field, and we don't realize that there's been lots of analyzing that's been done. So Joe Lewis is a good acquisition. And there's Paddy Sullivan as well. He's also from Ireland. He's also in that system. Well, there's lots of Irish. There's Jerry Flannery as well. There's Tony Brown from New Zealand. So there's lots of international.
And Felix Jones, he's the most Irish of them all, I suppose.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit. So that's interesting. But what's happening on the field, we can talk about that. I think it's settled. Springbok 15 maybe will be tested a little bit on what's going to happen from the reserves and how he applies that. And England selected a very strong team, very physical up front, strongest front rows that they could pick. Fairly settled in the back. There's a few new faces, younger players, and then interesting for me is a new number 9, not new, but preferred. It's Van Poortvliet. He's preferred to Mitchell, and I'll discuss that now. I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah, from what I remember Hugh Griffin telling me that Van Poortvliet is slow. That's the one thing that stands into my mind. I want to just talk about that English composition before we move on to the specific players. I'm worried about, if I was an England supporter, I would be worried about the lack of cohesion. A lot of this team hasn't really played. Look at the back line. Almost every player is from a different club, kind of a thing. They've been together for about a week or so, but still, coming up against a very, very settled Springbok side, guys that have been playing together for ages, with a younger team, untested combinations, at altitude in Ellis Park, a bit of on the back foot. You've had a terrible Six Nations. England must be under pressure here, surely.
Yeah, I think they're under pressure. They didn't have a good Six Nations, so there was like record scores as well against them, and didn't do well. At least for them, they've played quite recently, so it's a few months ago, but they've had a full Six Nations. I think the Springboks again in the same challenge they had when Australia came last year. So Australia came, the first test, the Springboks haven't played for a long time. Strong team. We started off well, 21-0 or something up, and then Australia blew us away at Ellis Park. Remember, Australia came off the back of a very competitive Lions tour that was just completed, and South Africa didn't have any tests. The same is now. South Africa played 7 months ago, and that was on the European. They played against Barbarians, but not at all the team that's playing on Saturday. So that's something that Rassie Erasmus also addressed in the media. He said that they must be wakey, they must be switched on from the set go. They must have good attention to detail, all those things. And so he's concerned. I think he's concerned about the 7 months ago and England playing quite recently. So it's been a few months for England, but they're probably more settled. But that's going to be the test for Rassie Erasmus to get all those players within that 23 as well. There's players that haven't played much as well. That's Peter Steff, Tuev that played it against the Barbarians, but even Etzebeth also very rusty. So he must kind of come back and quickly get into his old Eben Etzebeth mode. So that is a bit untested. So the 15 know each other quite well. Obviously, lots of test matches, etc. But then there's a few players coming off the bench for the Springboks. That's that 1 test or 6 tests and stuff like that. So that's going to be a little bit of a test and how that plays out. It plays out in 2 ways. Injuries force you to do certain things. If no injuries, I think Rossi will be in a good position to be more strategic, obviously, with how he apply his reserves. So hopefully there's not big challenges there, specifically at lock that we discussed previously or a few days ago with no, let's say, known lock that's on the reserve bank, but on the reserves, but it will be Pieter-Steph du Toit that will probably double up to go in there if there's an injury problem.
Well, talk to me about that England team. What did you pick up about Van Poortvliet being chosen at 9? What's your thinking?
I think it's size, and I think it's a fear for the physicality that they're going to get. He's 1.83 meters. He's 6 foot. He's in the old language. He's 6 feet, so it's 1.83. So he's bigger, but he's slower, as you said previously. So I think they prepared for a grinding game, maybe a slower game, more kicks, and more of a premium on being more physical in that defensive channel where the 9 is needed as well. So Mitchell is 1.78, so he's not small. He's not big. He's just a normal number 9. But I think they went for size there. I think that's definitely because Alex Mitchell was their preferred number 9 all through the Six Nations. So I think that's what they did. They went for physical forwards as well. Obviously, there's no Maro Itoje, so they have to manage that. But they've got strong players on the bench as well. Ewells and Pepper, and then Pollock coming on as well. But I think what caught my eye was more the front row and the reserves. Often you don't only look at number 1, 2, and 3. You must look at 16, 17, 18. Now that's where the whole scrum thing develops. And so they've got Ellis Genge, experience, lots of caps, very strong. Jamie George, experienced captain as well. Then John Hayes is the tight head. So they settled up front. What's interesting when I look at the reserves, MV, they're not well known, not players that we know, that players that we don't see that much. So the Lucet reserve, they call him Bino Uhano. So he plays for Bath. But everybody that's watching now can have a look on Saturday. When he comes onto the field, it's going to look like Oxen Chair running onto the field. He looks exactly like Oxen Chair. He's actually built like Oxen Chair, 1.76 as well, short, stocky, 120 kgs. So he plays for Bath. So he'll know Thomas du Toit, but Thomas du Toit will also know him. So that's quite interesting. So the other tight head prop is Asher Apoku Forjor. So difficult to pronounce. He's got Ghanaian ancestors, so he's a bit of an African link, but he's only 21. He's played just 6 tests, so he's going to come up on the tight head side. So there's going to be pressure from Steenkamp on him. So that's going to be interesting to see. But apparently both of them good scrummagers. Luke Cohen Dickey is the reserve hooker as well, so he's quite experienced. So that will be the big battle. Weather's going to be fine. It's going to be cool, 16 to 13 degrees on sunset, so there's no rain. So it's just a cold, cool evening, so there's not a slippery pitch, hopefully. But scrummage is going to be interesting. So they kind of getting themselves ready for a physical battle. I think that's the reason also why Pollock is waiting in the to come up in the second half. I don't think they're prepared to put him into that slog, that arm wrestle slog, physical slog in the first 20.
Yeah, if he comes on, and let's talk about him a little bit. I mean, he's going to be sort of a marked man. I'm sure when he runs out on the field, it's going to be a couple of boos maybe and a couple of jeers. I mean, he's just inviting it, and he thrives on it. I mean, that he gets his energy from it. You can see. Can you imagine him being, hyping up the crowd a little bit and then, proving us all wrong and scoring a fantastic try, or the opposite. He gets taken out by Marco van Staden in a bone crunching tackle or something. You never know. But I'm looking forward to that, just for the almost theatre of it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that in that game. And the question that now arises, you talk about the crowd. How big do you think that crowd's going to be? SA Rugby now sort of backpedaled, dropped the prices, and now saying, yeah, but the crisis is being overblown in the papers. There's never been a crisis yet. At the same time, dropping prices and no refunds to the people who committed early.
Yeah, it's a problem for them. I think they should have looked again at the big picture. Firstly, it is expensive, but secondly, I think the biggest issue is just there's an oversupply of big rugby coming up between Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Soweto. So that people look at that as well. You remember when the Springboks play at Johannesburg, there's about 20,000 people that probably go from Pretoria to watch it as well. But they say, oh, let's wait a little bit. Next week, Scotland play at Loftus. Let's go and watch that game. So that's the influence there. We've got the All Blacks coming. Remember, the All Blacks play against the Lions and the Blue Bulls. They play Test rugby there at Ellis Park as well. They play a Test in Soweto, Soccer City as well. So there's a massive amount of rugby on the way. So it's kind of an oversupply for all the stadiums, all the rugby happening in that region. So I think that's got to influence as well. I think first it is too expensive, but normally when England play against the Springboks at Ellis Park, even if it's expensive, you pack the stadium because it's such a big interest. But I think playing Scotland next week at Loftus got a big influence. I think lots of thousands of people that would have driven through from Pretoria will just say, but let's just wait, let's just save our money, take the whole family and let's go watch them play Scotland.
Well, you can't say Ellis Park, Ari, you have to say 10Bet Ellis Park. At last, a new naming sponsor. 5-year deal signed. Never heard of them before. I don't bet or don't gamble, but I suppose, they must have the money to back it up. I hope. We know from Formula One days, a couple of big sponsor names that never materialize with the money. I'm not saying this can happen in this instance at all. Please, people, don't shoot me. I'm just saying I never heard of these people before. I'm very happy that they actually have a naming sponsor. It took them a while, almost a year or more than a year, I suppose.
Yeah, it's good, and it's economic capital of South Africa. So there needs to be a strong sponsor there. But the rugby experience at Ellis Park it remains a bit of a challenge, and that's just my personal experience. The last time I was watching rugby was a test that we also watched together. Was Italy that played against Springboks in Pretoria, and I remember it's a great experience. You can go just outside the stadium, there's big screens and there's restaurants, etc. You can hang around and there's beer tents. Ellis Park, you kind of on the final whistle just take your jacket and run for your car. So it's a totally different experience. So I think that is a challenge in just your it's a through the years. Ellis Park's been good to South African rugby from 95 onwards, etc. Excuse me, but in recent times also we've lost big against Australia there. So it's not that fortress that can't be broken. We've had success, but we've also had challenges there. So it's not the be all and end all, the only place, only field in South Africa that we can beat big teams. I mean, we've actually playing in Cape Town and in Pretoria and Durban is just as good. But anyway, I think the total experience is a challenge at the moment, and that's probably an influence as well on people buying tickets as well. I think that comes into play a little bit.
Yeah, I think what we have to keep in mind is fuel, for example, is double what it costs, much more than it cost beginning of the year. So people's disposable income has shrunk. Never mind how much the tickets are available, how big the supply is, and everything else. People just don't have as much spendable money than they did before. And SA Rugby sort of alluded to it when they said it's down to the war against Iran, which directly affected fuel prices. I mean, like I said, everything is more expensive. And I think that's also playing a role there. We'll see next week against Scotland about those ticket sales, because the unions can't tell us, because SA Rugby is running it. The unions can't tell us how good the sales are or not, for that matter. So we'll see how that pans out. Just getting back to the rugby quickly, big talk about Manie Libbok being chosen. I think for me, it was a no-brainer. The best decision. Yes, maybe last year wasn't such a good game, but so what? Everybody's got ups and downs. He looks like a much more confident player. Looks the way he was talking at the press conference this week, he seems to have, I don't know, grown in stature a little bit. Maybe being out of the limelight, playing in Japan. Maybe second league, a little bit less pressure. I think I'm looking forward to how well he performs.
Yes, and he's been under enough pressure to be able to experience what it's like to play international rugby, and he's had success and he's had challenges, but it happens to everybody. It happened to Johnny Wilkinson, Dan Carter, even every player. We look at the 10s, they're under pressure, they need to kick all their conversions, they need to kick the penalties, there's pressure on that tactically run the show. But I like the way that he presented himself at the media. So he's saying, but I need to take responsibility and get the team to play in the right areas, to call the plays in the right moments, etc. So he knows the responsibility. There's lots of leaders around him as well. So he's a few years on. He's always been a very attacking player. So if you put him in space, He's very good at that. He's good in those little kicks to the wings as well. But he'll play you. He's not going to be just a link. If it's on, he'll play you. Tactically, kicking is a lot better as well. His kicking to the poles improved quite a bit as well. There was one season where he really battled, but that seemed to be a lot better. He's been kicking in Japan quite a bit. I think under different pressure, I think he could get his technique and settle into that. It's like a golf swing as well. Sometimes it's better to go and play on your own in 9 holes and just get your swing right again. So it feels a little bit like that. He's been playing in Japan out of the limelight a little bit and just do your thing. So hopefully it will be all okay, but there's going to be pressure. There's been pressure on Pollard as well. He missed a few kicks playing for the Bulls as well in some of the semis and et cetera in the URC. So that happens. They're all human. You're not going to kick 100% all the time. But in terms of his experience, he knows what it's like to play for the Boks. He knows the Lendy next to him. He knows Williams. He knows the setup. He knows what's expected. I agree. The media conference, they asked him all the tough questions about kicking, etc. They even asked him if he can speak a few Japanese words. He could only manage to say 2 words, but that was enough. So maybe they speak mostly English in his
2 more than I can I can say.
Yeah, I think I can maybe say sushi. I don't know if that's even a Japanese
samurai.
Samurai something. But anyway, but he's a settled player. I'm looking forward to see that they give him good ball as well. If he get front foot ball on Saturday, he'll be a threat.
Yeah, okay. So going back history, head-to-head, South Africa, the clear favourites, won 29 times. England's only won twice. England's last one at Joburg in 1972, it looks like.
Mm.
So, I mean, yeah, the odds are against them. So what are you predicting? I see some of our rugby publications are predicting quite a big score for the Boks beating England, not just handsomely, but hands down almost. What are you thinking?
No, I think it's going to be tough. I think, and I'm scared on what's happening because we haven't played in 7 months. I'm scared because what happened against Australia at Ellis Park after they've played against the Lions. So I think it's been a few months that England didn't play as well. But remember, that for them playing fairly recently, 6 Nations is a big advantage. So they have got lots of, it's easier, quicker for them to get together again. So Rusty, in terms of a team, I'm a bit concerned. I think it's going to be an arm wrestle. Also, we need to look at the referee as well. Not that he's going to be the be and end all, but it is James Dolman. He's from New Zealand. He's going to be a referee. Some will remember the name all of a sudden because of what happened against Italy last year. He's the referee that sent off Mostert in the 12th minute against Italy for that red card. That was very shaky in terms. Well, it was so shaky that it was overturned to a yellow after the game. So that was, we were down to 13 at one stage as well.
I remember now. All the drama is coming back. Yeah.
Yeah, but he did have his game back after that at least. He was the referee when the Springboks played Australia in Cape Town after they lost against Australia in Ellis Park. Remember that game that was played in Cape Town? Not a big win, 32-22 or something, but it was he was the referee in that game as well. So we've had a game. That game wasn't too bad. I think he was good in that game. So we don't look at that, but it's interesting to see we've got a New Zealand referee. Often I feel more comfortable with the Southern Hemisphere referees and the way they referee, but we don't get exposure to them as much anymore as we did in the Super Rugby times. It was European referees. Obviously, if you've got the Irishman or Welshman or Scottish referee, England will be more comfortable with them normally in the previous years. So New Zealand, Southern Hemisphere, it's not a big difference, but I feel a little bit more comfortable having a New Zealand referee than somebody from Europe.
Well, we're used to the Northern Hemisphere referees now playing in the URC, like you just said. So we're almost in the same boat as England and all those other, well, not England, Scotland and those teams, because they're used to the way that the URC, for example, is refereed. These guys come from Super Rugby, Super Rugby is being played, let's call it slightly differently, be euphemistic, let's be gentle, but I think there might be a bit of an interpretation problem, but yeah, we'll get to that. South Africans, the overwhelming favourite of the bookies as well. Like I said, there's now 10-bet Ellis Park, so we have to talk about the odds. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm not interested in betting. So anyway, right, next game, early tomorrow morning, All Blacks, first game under Dave Rennie after Scott Robinson was shown the door unceremoniously early. And interesting, especially number 10, no Beauden Barrett in the entire 23. That's a big upset, maybe a new direction.
Yeah, it's Ruben Love. So he's exciting. He's 25 years old. So he's attacking fly off. We haven't seen much of him. If you watched all the games early on Saturday mornings, you would pick him up playing for the Hurricanes. So Hurricanes had a brilliant season. He's got Mackenzie at 15 as well. So he's going for two very attacking players at 10 and 15. Will Jordan playing at on the wing. So that's the first. I think that's the first intent he's showing, that he wants to play more attacking rugby, probably. A new name to remember, Ruben Love. So we'll probably see a lot of him when the All Blacks come and play, if he stays healthy in the next few months. But yes, it's a big game for Rennie, picking his first team. I listened to Geordie Barrett in his interview with the media. That's his fourth All Black coach, just for him playing. That's incredible. So there's been lots of chopping and changing, settling in. He says it's small little adjustments, but he said that Rennie told them it's about getting off the floor quicker. So that was an interesting statement that Dave Rennie, maybe it was commitment. I think he challenged the team and maybe challenged how the team played in the past few seasons in commitment. So he worded it as saying the lesson from Rennie was get off the floor quicker. So I think it's a little bit of commitment, a little better commitment. But interesting team to see. Cam Roygaard still at number 9, so he's a big player at number 9 for them as well. Ardie Savea starting at 8 as captain as well. So there's a few injuries as well at lock, but strong front row. So it will be Fletcher, Newell, Tyrrell Lomax, and Ethan de Groot. They will be some of the forwards or the props there. Against France, just talking about that, they've got a problem at prop because they don't have Toulouse and Montpellier players that's not available. They've got all the players from Bordeaux that's playing. So it's almost like Bordeaux playing against the Hurricanes in different jerseys. But they've taken a prop from retirement. He's 33 years old. His name is Jefferson Purell. He's going to play prop. So they've got a problem at prop. So that's going to be the pressure. So how can they survive the onslaught of New Zealand? They're quite settled in the front row. So that's going to be the challenge for them. But there's enough players from Bordeaux that can keep them busy. I mean, just look at 9-10, Maxime Luca, Jalibert at 10. You've got Pinot on the wing. Just a pity that Louis Billy Bierry, he's not playing. So he's been rested, and Antoine Dupont also injured. So there's enough players, but I think they will keep New Zealand busy for 60 minutes, but I think New Zealand will be too strong. But it's interesting. Antoine Dupont, they haven't played there since 2017 or something. Yeah. So he doesn't like traveling to New Zealand.
No. People are wondering whether he's going to make a showing up, a pitch up there. But obviously last week was the final. Toulouse beating Montpellier in the top 14 final. What a game that was. So yeah, they're not available. So, but I mean, they didn't say he wasn't available. They said he was injured. So I'm just interested to know why that was what the case really there was there really. So Via at 8 is actually been I thought he was better at flank maybe. Moving it back to 8. I always thought he might be a bit small as an 8.
Yeah, they had Satiti there most of the season last year. Young, very exciting number 8. He's on the reserve bench. And so Savea played between flank and 8th man. 2023 World Cup, I think he was mostly... Also, I can't remember if he was on the flank mostly in 2023, but he's obviously experienced captain, having been the captain of the World Cup in 2023. So I think that's worth a lot to them. He's just been appointed as captain for a year, quote unquote, from the coach. So seems like New Zealand's still kind of working in all these 2-year sequences. They've appointed Tony Brown even from 2 years out. So they're a bit nervous. How things going to work and keeping the doors open. But Savea, a good player. Obviously, he's more mobile. We know how fast he is. He's physical as well. Good ball player. So from number 8, he can play well. But then again, the Super Rugby that they've been playing was... I still have doubt about the defensive pressure they get playing against Australian teams. It's a little bit better when they play the New Zealand teams, but still the scores are big. That final was a massive mismatch and big scores. But I think the challenge for New Zealand might be they're not going to have the space and all the go forward that they normally get in all these franchise rugby. I think even the French team with just kind of Bordeaux players will test them a little bit bigger there. it's going to be more pressure. There's going to be less space. There's going to be less time. So yes, so VA is a key player. So he's the kind of player that you give him 2-3 moments in a game. It's like Pollock as well. So that's the same threat. He can create those moments where he can create something for you and it's 7 points. But he's a good player. I think a good leader as well. So good choice for Rennie to get him back again.
I think the French team's ace up the sleeve is going to be Luku and Jalibert, that 9-10 combination. I think, Rooigaard's a good number 9, experienced number 9. Ruben Love is almost a rookie kind of a thing at 10 specifically. I would watch that battle quite closely. And I wouldn't be surprised because, I just noticed that New Zealand last won in Christchurch in 2016. Won there in 10 years. So it's not like it's a fortress or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, they haven't played there much as well because of the earthquake. So it's kind of this new stadium. It's they call it the One New Zealand Stadium in Christchurch now. It's a 30,000 seater. They can push it to 36,000. But it's interesting. It's a solid closed roof. It's always closed. So it's they call it the ET double.
Always closed. Okay.
Yeah, it's a transparent roof, they call it. It's called the ETFE roof, and it allows natural grass to grow. So it's permanently closed. So it's never going to be open. So that's quite interesting. They're still kind of putting bets on who's going to kick up and under into the roof, who's going to be the first player. Seems like the roof is quite low as well. So maybe it can happen this week. They can get Frans Steyn in for a game. He'll show you quickly how to hit the roof without
Sasha can kick up more. It takes forever to come down, so it's going up very high. Yeah. So your prediction, what do you think? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's New Zealand. I think they will come out of the blocks flying. I think it's a new broom. They're going to sweep. Yeah, I think Dave Rennie is a good coach. Good team, good players in there. They settled. I think France will give them a big go into the second half. But pressure in the tight 5 is going to tell in the end, and there's good runners in the New Zealand team. Love and Mackenzie is going to be difficult to keep them down for 80 minutes if they get good ball. So I think I'll say the All Blacks coming away with a win again. They play Italy next week as well, so I think he's going to be out of the blocks with 2 quick wins. But it's going to be tough. Always when France go there, it's kind of like a semi-B team, and they've been competitive in the third test last year. The first 2 they lost quite far, but I think New Zealand will win. But it's going to be close for 50, 60 minutes, and then they'll pull away. I think so.
Yeah, well, it's basically the top 14 champions against the Super Rugby champions, like you just said, Hurricanes versus Bordeaux. Not entirely, but close.
That's mostly,
to watch out for. Just briefly, Ari, Joe Schmidt, these last 3 tests in charge of Australia, lots of rumours about him maybe going back to Leinster now that Leo Cullen has said that he's going to retire after, or, move on to greener pastures. I don't know where, after next year. But he's Joe Schmidt has denied that. He said he's sort of basically done with coaching, sounds to me like. But, you never know. He's been with Leinster. He was with Ireland for many years, playing against his old team now again in the form of Ireland. I'm just briefly looking forward to that, the swan song kind of a thing, because he did sort of revitalise Australian rugby to a degree, don't you think?
Oh yes, he did, and he was a good coach for them in the Lions series. He made them very competitive, a lot more competitive than we thought. And he's a brilliant coach. I mean, he's well respected in Ireland. I would think that there will be a few phone calls going to and fro. I think Ireland's been good to him. He's been good to Ireland. So wouldn't be a surprise if that happens. He's back in New Zealand for personal reasons, but those personal reasons sometimes change as well in a year or two, and you can make your way back again. Interesting. That is a very interesting game for me. That just briefly on Australia Ireland because of what happened in the Lions series. Because obviously we've got Farrell. That's a coach of Ireland. He was the coach of the British and Irish Lions last year. So he's back again playing against Australia. So he knows Australia. I think he can just go back on his computer to all his analysis from last year mostly, and he'll be spot on. So he respects Australia. He's a bit nervous about what they offer, especially with Jorgensen and all those speedsters on the wing. But it's going to be an interesting matchup. But it's 2 great coaches. I think 2 well-respected coaches in Farrell and Joe Schmidt matching up on that one. That's going to be played in Sydney, so a big test as well. Lots of rugby to be played on Saturday.
I saw someone is saying 14 hours of rugby, uninterrupted kind of a thing this weekend coming up.
I think just when we've had enough at 8 p.m. on Saturday evening, then Argentina play as well against Scotland. So
Yeah.
by then we're probably going to have had enough. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, we have to watch
Into that.
Scotland because we have to know what we're up against. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So on that subject, next week I'll be talking to Franco Smith after the England game before the Scotland game. So looking forward to that one. So yeah, what he's got to say, both what South Africa did against England and what to expect against Scotland, I suppose, after their performance against Argentina. So don't miss that one. Harry, thank you, man. It wasn't bad for two Afrikaans outies speaking English on a Friday morning. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Yes, all we can say is go Bokke is universal. So, yes, it was nice, and it's great that the Springboks play again big test. Hopefully, there's a few more people that will sneak into the stadium and make it close to a full house. Hopefully,
yeah. Well, it's now so cheap you can somewhere buy a ticket apparently. So there we go. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Okay, Ari, thanks, man. Have a good weekend. I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thanks. Bye bye.